Welcome to the Baxter School of Lie Detection. I'm Cleve Baxter, and during the next 6 weeks here in San Diego, you're going to be involved in a very intensified instructional course in the use of the polygraph, or so-called lie detector.
In the course of a career dedicated to investigation for federal and municipal law enforcement agencies, Cleve Baxter has earned a reputation as the world's foremost authority on the polygraph.
Well, as of February 2nd, 1966, I'd been in the polygraph field full-time for 18 years. And this particular morning, I'd been working all night in the laboratory and had decided to water a plant in the lab, very similar to the plant here, Dracaena cane plant. My thought was that as the moisture arrived to the leaf of the plant, the plant should be a better conductor, and I should get a reading on the chart. Well, strangely enough, I didn't get this at all, and in fact, it did just the opposite. Instead of the tracing edging upward as it should have on the chart, it went into sort of a wild excitation, very similar to the first part of a human taking a polygraph test. But then it occurred to me, just about 14 minutes along, what would be the real optimum threat to the well-being of a plant. In fact, the imagery of fire entered my mind, and I not only thought, but I fully intended to burn the very leaf that was being tested with a match. Now, I had no matches in the room at the time, and I don't smoke, and I had to go next door to my secretary's area to get a match. But the interesting thing is that right at the split second that imagery of fire entered my mind, the tracing reflecting the changes in the plant just went right off the top of the page. And the only thing that occurred at that time, no lighting of a match, nothing else, merely the imagery of fire. And I must say that as of 14 minutes along in that initial observation on the morning of February 2nd, 1966, my life just hasn't been the same.
Responding to the initial experience, when a plant apparently read his mind, Baxter works nights on his own in his small laboratory. His goal is to perfect an experiment that will satisfy the rigid criteria of the scientific establishment. Baxter hopes to show that plants react to any termination of life in their immediate environment. During the next 6 hours, at some undetermined moment chosen by a randomizer, these brine shrimp will fall to their deaths in boiling water. By totally automating his equipment, Baxter is determined to eliminate human influence. In another room, completely separate from his laboratory, Baxter has placed a philodendron plant, a polygraph, and a videotape recorder. Carefully, he places a leaf between a pair of electrodes that will monitor the electrical activity of the plant. As he has done during countless police interrogations, Baxter establishes a baseline on his polygraph to get an accurate recording of the reaction of his subjects. The video recorder will tape the details of the experiment in Baxter's absence.
For the automation of this experiment to be successful, I have to get a certain distance away from my lab so that my consciousness won't affect the results.
California dawn often finds Cleve Baxter still at work in a small room behind his laboratory. The results of each night's work must be carefully analyzed and recorded. In spite of his high percentage of successful results, only a few daring individuals from the scientific establishment have come forward with offers to replicate his experiments or test his results. The great majority are content simply to condemn his efforts without taking the trouble to investigate their validity.
A few brine shrimp die and a plant feels their death. I think it's the smallness of the event that makes it so significant. It means that even on the lower levels of life, there's a profound consciousness or an awareness that binds all things together.
Research conducted in the Soviet Union leads scientists to believe that plants may think. Attached to delicate electronic instruments, a cabbage plant registers annoyance to the exhaling of tobacco smoke on its leaf surfaces. A scene familiar in any kitchen takes on special importance in this experiment.
Володя, переключи задание по всем параметрам. Тамара, бери препарат. Все готовы? Начинай.
In some mysterious way, the plant which is attached to the instrument is able to feel the mutilation of its comrade. In a more advanced experiment, technicians were asked to pass through a laboratory containing 2 living cabbage plants. One of the subjects has been instructed to destroy the plant which is not attached to the electronic instruments. Hours later, the technicians are asked to return to the scene of the crime. The evidence is clear. The remaining plant has correctly identified the assailant.
Ты должна быть сердитой.
During recent years, gardening enthusiasts throughout Japan have been privileged to witness the remarkable demonstrations of Dr. and Mrs. Kenneth Hashimoto. Dr. Hashimoto, Managing Director and Chief of Research for the Fuji Electronic Industries, has constructed special instruments which translate the electrical output of plants into modulated sounds, giving voice to a cactus. Relying on her affinity for plants, Mrs. Hashimoto looks forward to actual conversation with her cactus. Convinced that it possesses an intelligence, she is determined to teach it the Japanese alphabet. Norman Goldstein, a professor of biology and expert in the new science of electrophysiology, agrees to review the results of the experiment, which will determine whether the plant, Mimosa pudica, actually responds to human emotions.
As you can see, we have the normal copper screen and such as that Faraday cage, block out electromagnetic signals, radiations. But in addition to that, we have a plexiglass over here that blocks the wind movements and ion movements and air flows that would, shake the plant, cause abnormal signals. We also have a motion detector in here, which will allow us to look and see whether any external motions or movements have interfered with the experiment, so we can tell when the plant is actually vibrated.
Where's the subject with respect to the cage now?
We're going to seat him, within a few feet of the cage, probably about 5 feet. And he'll be viewing a screen. He'll be watching a stimulus movie that we're providing. Mm-hmm. And then his emotional responses should carry over into the cage here and affect the plant. That's what we're hoping for.
We're going to be measuring your galvanic skin response, which means your emotional activity.
Okay. Let's hope there is some.
Is that too tight?
No, that's great.
Okay. This is going to measure your blood volume. And this will measure the muscle tension in your forehead, or the EMG.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Good.
Very convincing. I have to think about that one. Well, let's say that the experiment is quite well done. Then you're claiming that the individual's response is producing some kind of energy display. When you're finished analyzing your data and it supports your contentions, you can imagine what importance this will be. You can imagine it'll change our whole picture of how we relate to plants, so that we're interacting with them all the time.
For 6 years, L. George Lawrence, a Silesian-born electronics engineer, has used an abandoned prospector's cave in the California desert as a base of operations for research in a new science called biocommunications. His purpose in choosing such a remote location was to eliminate man-made electronic interference during a series of remarkable experiments.
I started my work on plants in 1962 while I was an engineer in the aerospace industry. And at that time, it was one of our goals to develop jam-proof missile components. Now, after much experimentation, my attention turned to living plant material, in particular to plant leaves. Plant leaves are able to react to gravitational changes, to temperature changes, to electrostatic fields, and so on, simultaneously. Now, a man-made sensing device cannot do this. So, as time went on, and I experimented with these various plants and plant leaves, I noted very unusual reaction patterns. Now, at that time, I thought that my equipment was defective. It did not occur to me that I was witnessing a profound consciousness in these living plants.